Aya yaxatini takat yuhan kunchish wuchin khasati Ţakwaháa Yeawa yechwaji chasatin gled aya shashakig Cleat gate lay dakusatan ak kwan anikuk Wusha koa tesh aye uti hadaye yati weglaid tesh hudlan tesh koste Gwastak koa aye yati Wan qalins atkhagud koa Wushakitl kaushakitl aywe Ajoy wudletik wede Kadena ya kakwakuch Wan qalins qone aya Kahwan aya khosatin Khosaku qone aya Kashakitl away wudlekat wede Khosaku so gwasya shuk o kahwan itch aya nachlinuk away Kahwech Katsik shaltin Ḳukaháa gutsu Ajoy achtuasagu at qaqashi Wish adat at Aqa away yayagi khasatin Wuch itch aya atasya kannalich Awaq Adat yutachtatan Gwash ihkide aya Haskak gwash yij Kash unashay aya haani dakhaya Haskak gwash yiji Awaq Gach Acho atlesh has to tour ashku yak has wati with hawk Sedaqida Sedaqida Dasatu dagitgiya Ge awa khwaach awach ini aya has outsin we dagitgiya Kodakhiyati ade yandaqini Ya hastu gwash qukl Hechosaku Talk aya yak has wati Dach tatsitsu Ihkide hasya kannalich Llach again Dúl Chakutani de Tlashawd de hin qa Lingatani ka Dúl Chosatin qa Fairbanks aye hawutin Dúl Qosatiu Achuatsu Ak Tak aya Haska gwaltig Hicht Taqa Gwalhin su hechosaku gusa Ye awa tak tunach Awatusaku achua Yayatsi neil qatik Katuk tude aya Hasnatij Tak qanach Ye awa tak Ţakwaháa Ya ak kwan anikuk Ye awa khosatin Atkhagud tsu Ha Qusiat Wane chaye cooking Tashtak qaq qu owe ohan Tashwatusaku eqa qusiat Tas ohan qa chaye cooking ki Htakatat yanaltik Achway Sach qa Sag Atina khayati Qashiketi Sag Tsu Yashingit yuqatangi kuti Kikachtu aq We Sag Katsag Hastu kade aya Yevtusini Acho adatki tashastu twa ashko Tatke awe tekha Khana kawanik Tashach twa ashko Shushyakhti Sag Khana kawanik Tashtu twa ashko Yekhwa u Khatra Yekhwa jish kawdliyeejí da Just tashtu twa ashko Du twa suku Khyoshkyakhti Khatra qushtech Wasa kawdlitsaqo Qa'a qashija chadaqasa Chadaqasa aya hastu tuwati Aqa awe Du jin wudza at Washisuku Khatsewa at Qusiat Sa'at Wudza at أخلو وتأت يا أوه خد سوى أت ياغ وشين جت يا تندتاني تين إسي أيا وتأت إيقا إسي وأت يا أوه يا خوجي الشي شاخيتي سآخ وصاي توج
Mm.
okay Kaduzka. Thoughts or questions?
Qane
Oh,
we atatke tlalqarsaku we wasa kawdliyeejí t'aqu i uh shaksani qa yada katska we colors
oh,
I mittens I hat
yeah,
do
yes.
mittens do hat
So it's talking like it gets colder, right?
uh
They get, oh, I need a hat and gloves. And then I think sock is mittens, and shiteki sock are gloves. So they're fingered mittens. And then I said at the language nest, we're always trying to put hats and gloves on kids, which is always kind of difficult, right? Sometimes they're a little hand, they don't have the dexterity, and then the fingers start getting lost. Where's the thumb, you know? And there was a little boy there, and the inkach when it's I want you to wear your gloves. He says, I don't know where they are though. So I looked in his bag. So I found these pink mittens that were in there. And he says, I don't want those ones. I want blue ones. And he said, my mom told me she doesn't want me to wear pink ones. I thought he was lying to me. I don't think I think he didn't want them. Right? I don't think his mom said no pink mittens, right? And so he went outside and Dujin would and his hands got cold. Then I was saying like, you know, sa'at, kusi'at, wudzaat, sewa'at. What's the difference between those? Oh, I guess there should be, let's see if I get this right. Sa'at, ausa'at, wudzaat, sewa'at.
And you said kusiat too.
Kusi'at.
Yeah. Cold weather, cold temperature.
Kusi'at, yeah. Cold weather, cold temperature.
Say
Chatsewa I'm cold.
Yes. So yekhwaji tlingitundatani kwash isa wudzaat eqa isewa'at. Acho khatsewa'at. Yekhwaji. So maybe the Tlingit way of thinking is once this part of your body gets cold, you are cold. Because when you say khatsewa'at, it is talking about either a voice or this. It's most commonly in a verb. Sa is most commonly a voice. It is this very interconnected thing, right? We talked about this a couple times. So as a body part, sa is this part right here, at the base of your neck. It also is a voice, although voice is also satu inside the base of the neck, right? And then you see it when it gets put onto a verb. It's most commonly talking about voice, like Essakhwa'ach, I heard your voice, as opposed to ikhwa'ach, I heard you making noise, like walking around. And so when you talk about being cold, you'll say khatsay wa'at as a living thing, because like once this part of your body gets cold, I think then you're truly cold. Like that's the telltale spot, I guess. But like, so if we look at this thing, sa, and then there's this other thing, saw, which is a name. So I was listening to Ken Austin, a recording of Ken Austin. He was Ţukaháa. And he taught me Tlingit in, I think the summer of 2000. But it was like, that was Tlingit boot camp. Oh, Yisaku Ustat Yaksa. Khan Day Nawe Kain Kew. If you only knew what it was like to learn from a drill sergeant. Ooh, there was some yelling going on in that classroom. But he's very, very knowledgeable. And in this recording, he was talking about this relationship between sa and saw as nouns, right? So as nouns, it's a body part, and it's also a name, achsayi, right? So you can have a possessed form. But then we see it on verbs. You do a sock. People call it that. And then also ye'u wasa. Someone named it that. But then you also have wasa, to take a rest. And there's breathing in there. And then you have chaseku, which means to be breathing or to be alive. And then you also have, maybe there's one or two more, right? Catching your breath, I think, is one, and being out of breath. But what he was saying is these are all connected concepts. Like in Tlingit, it's like once you get a name, you have breath, you have life. And all these things and how they're all sort of related. It was very, very cool. And so I smushed them all up when I went to the verb roots and stuff, like breathing and naming and stuff. And then today we're doing some breathing exercises, trying to de-stress. And so I think we went over these before. Neshtenidasa is a command form for breathe in. So you're breathing into the house. Neshtenidasa, your body is a home. And then kukhnidasa, return the breath, would be to breathe out, right? Kukhnidasa, neshtenidasa, kukhnidasa. Okay, so now we got kusiat, sewaat. Now I think we have sa'at, ausaat, and wudziat. I checked my trusty verb dictionary. Oops.
I'm guessing with the asewa'at that it's a object and subject involved in it, both. So it made me, or it was made cold.
Yeah, so somebody chilled it. Okay. So that leaves us with sa'at and wudziat. The last two pieces of the puzzle.
Is the wudziat just the past tense? Was cold? No, damn it. I mean, sorry. I was talking about the water holder thing.
That would be damn it up. That should be the command form. Cook sakit. Damn it up.
So yeah, wudziat. Did you say ya wudziat? Would that be cold face?
Yeah, so wudziat is when you talk about a body part being cold. Jin wudziat. Wudziat. And so works especially well for fingers and toes, as we know. I also said several times, just so I don't discredit myself, that those of us who live on the coast, we don't really know cold. It's the inland people who because we always complain here, but you could still pour a cup of coffee and it just spills on the ground. There, I think it vanishes or something. It's so cold. Yeah, and then sa'at is just for something to be cold. So as far as the chilling verbs, that's kind of how they're working.
What about when you're talking about like sa and thinking about cold, you know, when when it's cold, we have our whatever, you know, that comes out of our mouth, you know, like you can see the cold, the fog, you know,
See your breath.
see your breath.
Yeah.
When it's cold. Would that be connected too?
Well, that would probably be a kusiat, right? So once we get
Okay.
now we've got weather, like kuwata. But it was interesting because we were in an airplane. I think we flew to Hawaii, and there was a few Tlingit speakers on the plane. And like once we landed, we could just feel how hot everything was there. And I was like trying to say it was hot in the airplane, and I was saying kuwata, but they were saying no, it'd just be yata, yata ya yak. So if you're talking about a hot room or hot in the house, then the k doesn't go on there because it's really just like the weather. It's just sort of talking about what the weather is doing. So it could be hot outside and cold inside, or it could be cold outside and hot inside, right? So those are some differentiations that you sometimes make. But then I think if you're talking about like when I go outside, it's this cold, like so then you're dealing with kusiat. And then
Yeah, I
some
was only thinking because it comes from here, the throat, you know, when you're breathing. That's why I was wondering.
yeah, like if you had cold breath, which would be
Yeah,
pretty unusual, but that would be sa'at.
Sa'at.
But then sa'at is how you would describe non-living things being cold. And then you can also do that same thing, like that attributive suffix, sa'ati. So your throw, it's just like the relational suffix, like when you own something, yagu. The biggest difference is it always stays low. So sa'ati would be a cold thing. Sa'atihin, sa'atigucha, it's a cold cup. Sa'ati desek, cold breath. And so same with yata. So yata is hot. So kuwata, hot weather. Yata, something is hot. So you say yata aya yagucha. This cup is hot. But you could also say yata yigucha, a hot cup. So that's turning the verb, especially state verbs, works really well for state verbs, turns it into an adjective. Tchanikate, yakayati. Stinky dog right there. She's not that
I
bad.
see, looking here too at see ate uwach. It could be like dry cold, like inland compared to humidity.
Yeah, so you can have kuahuk, like it's
Cool.
cold, it's dry. So you could use them both. You could pussy aka kuahuk. Achawe ya ach jin kachyanik. So like some of us who are true coastal folks, like once we go inland, just my hands just start cracking, falling. Big deep cracks. Isha. My daughter, she's sleeping now with she's got this lotion on, and then nays aya akach away get the name. Nays aya akachaya wa na no ausana. Aka away li juan du jin kaye na teach. Takat way taught. Ye away na teach. So she sleeps with socks on her hands after putting lotion on. Ach so talk. Ye wa cho ach ya achuni. Achkani hitli ish. Du llilk. Well, gone do a good. Aus the kukusi art. At a way glade tin. Ye awa a kawa chuch. Du jin kach. Keshkeka aya. K sakwa. K sakwa art. I think I said that right. So I heard Lyle James talking about his grandfather. If he knew it was cold outside, when he first went outside, he would rub his hands in the snow, and that way he would never get too cold. So there's an old life hack for you. Tlingit hack. Tlingit ooh. Okay, anything else? Anything you guys were thinking about? Language questions? I know we did peace on earth. Kayet tlingit anika yenqati. Yenqati is such a great verb. It means let it be that way, right? So John, Paul, George, and Ringo, they borrowed it from us. So to let it be. And so you could do so many things with that, right? So if we take this, let me start a note here. Just to show you, like there's some verbs, like once you can conjugate it, now you could just say a whole bunch of different great things. So this verb, we usually know as yeejí, right? It is that way. And now we know there's an object pronoun in there. We could change it with all the object pronouns. Like we have learned how to do that. Yechatyeti, yeejí, yehayeti, yeejí, yeeyeti, yehasyeti, yekhayeti. Right? So you could do all those. Those are all your object combinations. We have ut, but we're not going to worry about that. So now, how would I say, so it is that way. This is also they are that way, right? So how would I say this? It was that way.
Yeewuti.
Yes. Yewuti. Right? So now I could do all those same things. Yechatwuti, yehawuti, yeiwuti, yewuti, yewuti, yehaswuti, yekawuti. Right? So once we've got it, now we could still change those objects, right? And because it's an object pronoun, that verb, it's not going to change a whole lot. Right? You could just change them all and it's still going to be wuti all the way down. You would have kuwati if you were doing the weather, but we're going to do ka for people. So how about this one?
I'm so tired.
Wasa? You're the quick.
What? Oh, chatting now.
It's wasaoti. And I think in Inuit languages, you'd say mute, mute. You're the people of the mute. Okay, so how would you say it will be that way?
Kugwastige.
Well, you're right, but you can't switch it to the S classifier.
Yekwati.
Yekwati, right? And we're going to do these futures. We're going to do these futures. We're going to show you how to put these things together. But now, same thing. Yechatkakwati. It would change a little bit. Okay, so this one would probably go through the most changes. Like, so if you go this, you're going to go to that. And there's someone say kukwati, someone say kukwati. You are going to get a little bit of variation in the future. And then you'd say ye, ha, because that ends with a vowel. It's going to push it back to this contracted form, right? So kukwati is just a contraction of kukwati, okay? So then you'll say ye ikwati. You will be that way. Ye yikwati. Y'all will be that way. And then ye yekwati and ye hus kukwati or kukwati, right? So now we've got all the futures, right? And so we could have done the same thing right here, right? So we had ye khatyati, ye hayati, ye iyati, ye yiyati, ye hasyati, ye kayati. Right, so there they are. Now we'll see them in the perfective. This is what they look like in a perfective. So we can actually copy and go khat, ha. So this one's probably going to change the least, right? The I will be attached. Ye, hus, and ha. Oops, oh, don't. So then we did the future. Okay, and the other thing to keep in mind with this is a whole bunch of things. Like, okay, let me do the, let's do the hortative, then I'll come back to these whole bunch of things. Okay. Oops, let it be. What's that one going to be like?
Yengati.
Yenqati. So yenqati is let it be that way, right? So now we have, there's our hortative verb, right? So you have ye, na, qa, ti. So 0, the classifier is 0. And so if it wasn't ye, like if you wanted to say, if I wanted to say, oh, I won't use blue because blue is different. If I say, let it be black, how would I say, let it be black? Because I'm going through my goth phase. Black pants,
Is it Uchienagdi?
tooch, but not yay, right?
Yuck.
When we get to those colors, now it's got to be yach. And so if it's yach, this now does not end with a vowel, so now you're going to get your uncontracted form, right? So this all comes back to contraction. When is it going to trigger? And it comes down to this vowel ending right here, because then that starts the count over. And by the count, I mean, if you look at this thing, you've got na, qa, 0, t. So you do have just 2 things. If you only have 2 things, you don't have to have contraction. But this becomes one of the things now. Once you get to 3, Richard Dowenhauer used to say 3 strikes and you're out. Says once you get 3 things, you're probably going to start getting contraction there. So what would this be in the uncontracted form then? Let it be black.
Yuck nagiti.
Naqati, right? So then you've got naqati, right? So this tells you what these ones should be like. So you're going to say ye, khat. What's it going to be?
Nagati.
Ye away. Ye ha.
Ngati.
Yes, right? So it's going to follow all these. Now the pattern is going to be there, right? If we got a vowel, you're going to get enqati. Otherwise, you'll have naqati. So this will also be ye, yin, qati. And then you're going to get ye, has, naqati. So that has, because it ends with a consonant, will pull that thing back apart, right? And then you're going to get ye, ha, nqati, which would sound a little bit weird to say, but that's you could say it that way. So now this is saying, let it be that way, right? And so I guess we do have one more. What's this one gonna be? When you get your commands, you can really only do second person singular, second person plural. Those are your only options for commands.
In a ti. Ah.
Ye inati. So then your only other option for here is yinati, right? So now you got, oops. You all be that way. Okay. So this is a lot. So we did imperfective, perfective, and then we did hortative and command. So I guess the only ones that are really left is you could now say tesh ye ute. Right? You could run that one through the whole thing. There's the negative imperfective. It is different, right? Because especially looking at, but we do know this one. We have heard it. even if we haven't looked at this form intensely, we have probably said hehwasa ote. We have probably said that. That's that negative form of yati. So yati is one of these verbs that's used in so many different ways, right? Klesh, ye, wuti, right? So it goes from wu to wu. And then the only thing that would change for this one, if I put klesh here, that needs to trigger one single change. Anybody know what it's going to be? Right there.
E.
It goes low, right? That's the only difference between, and we haven't really done this yet in this class, so it's okay. If you don't know these things, it's totally okay. We're going to go through these one at a time. But if you look at this yati verb, now we've got it in so many different ways. Like there's you could do the when one or the can't one, but let's not worry about that right now. We've got plenty. Is that way, isn't that way, was that way, wasn't that way, will be that way, won't be that way. Let it be that way, and then be that way, right? So what's really neat about this is now that you've got these nakati, right? So let's look at this yinkati for a second and all the different things that you might be able to say now. This goes back to Dage, Winnie Atlin, because I heard her say this one. What's that say?
Peace be with you.
What was the first part though?
It's not peace, is it?
No. But it is let it be with you. Whatever this sagu thing is.
Love? No, not love.
Joy.
Yes, because this is the noun form of this verb. Sagu is happy or joyful. So now this is saying, let joy be with you. I love to say that on birthdays instead of saying happy birthday. I'll just say sagu inyin qati. But now it could be anything, right?
Like the force.
Yes, right? So what if I wanted to say, let strength be with you?
That scene.
Chatsin inyin qati. Now it follows it. Everything is the same except for that. Let luck be with you.
Hate.
Shachait inyin qati. Let peace be with you. Kayet. Now you can wish anything up to with anybody, right? Try not to wish too much of the bad stuff because then it circles back around. So we'll think of the good things. But so now what we did is we added in. You know what else we could do? So I could say, I could change in to eg.
So
May,
to have something.
may you have good fortune,
Ah,
right? And then I could also, we did this one,
Kuya Yanka.
may you have good fortune. So someone's going to bingo? Oh, shachet, jiyin qati. And the hortative is always wishful thinking. You're hoping it into being. That's how the hortative form works. Let it be that way. Let us do this thing. Right? So, and this is still that same yati verb, right? And what really gets interesting with this, like let's switch over to the dictionary for a second. And then we're going to go find this T verb. Because now that we've learned how to do this, we just unlocked like 30 different verbs, I think. So we'll go down to the verb section. We'll go to T, which this locks up the database program for doing this kind of stuff because there's so many T verbs. So we're getting to T number 1, which is to be. Okay, so here's T. So if we put ye in front of that, yeejí, we have to be that way. And now we could say yeejí, to be at a place. Shqagweejí, let it be in Skagway, right? I mean, yeejí, yeequati, yeewuti. Now you could talk about where things were staying. Shqagweejí, it was in Skagway. Shqut, yach, yeejí, it's near Chilkoot Lake. Now we can have to affect something. Ach iwuti, ach in wuti, it affected me. Needing something. Hin etinech yenqati. I don't know why you'd say it. Let them need water, right? But now we could say they needed money. Dana etinech haswuti. They all needed money, right? That could fit into some sort of narrative. Dana itinech ikwati. You're gonna need money, right? But because we can put this one into the future, into the perfective, this one yati verb, to overpower, right? Ach kaya nach uti. It overpowered me. It was still. Kye yenkati ituwu. Let your thoughts be still. That's a nice calming thing. Tuqa, it's acceptable. Khatuqa wuti, it was acceptable to the people. Tunyati, to care about. So we see these things. To appear before someone, to be next to someone, right? Let me visit my auntie. Akhat, khank, yekhatnaqati. If I'm like making a wish or something like that. To be obedient, to be like something. Now we could do all the colors. Uchyakhwuti, it was black. Kuchyakhnakati, you could say it. Let it be chaotic. There, now you can have your moment of chaos stirring. That one verb unlocks all those things, right? And it shows you how to do that, right? Yenqati, yenaqati. Sometimes you'll hear people say yenaqati. They're just trying to be very intentional and deliberately uncontracting.
I'm confused about the future. In general, no. About the future tense in yati, because I'm so locked into the kukwa. But that only applies if it's the subject is doing the verb. Is that right?
Right. So
And because this is an object-only verb, we use a few different little sounds.
yeah, so here what you will have is you have ye
Mhm.
and you have ga, ga. Like
Mhm.
these three are mandatory. Every future verb will have those three things in that combination. Nothing goes between them. Everything has to go on either side of them. They have to go in that order. They'll be that way, right? Then you're going to end up with a zero classifier because all futures are minus I. And then for a positive future, it's always going to be long and high. For a negative, it's always going to be long and low. So coming back to these contraction rules that we've been talking about, we do now have 4 things. So contraction must happen. What's going to happen is this letter A is going to drop. That letter A drops, that becomes the letter K. That's what it does when you take that vowel away. That's why you get T. And when that turns into a K, this U jumps to the other side of Qa. That is something that happens in contraction. Things jump over, things fall out, things change to different sounds, but they are predictable. So then when you have the uncontracted version, you have Ga plus U plus Qa. gets you kuka. So they are all there, right?
I just have to say, why isn't that in your house because it's the Bible.
Well, so hausinechayuchatangi is designed to get us up to the verb. And now we're getting into the things that I'm currently making, which is like, okay, let's take a real good look at this thing.
Okay.
And that's when we get into things like this, and it's going through a number of different changes. Like as I keep talking about it and teaching it, and as we all keep interacting, somebody had the idea last spring to say color code the verbs then. So I color coded the verbs. It was Kuch. He's the one who told me to do it. And so now we get this color-coded system that we're going to keep sort of talking about, because I think this allows us to see these components for what they are and what they do, right? A lot of these have to do with meaning, who it's happening to, changing the meaning of the verb by adding some nouns to it, who's doing it, the classifier, which talks about like how the verb is functioning, the stem, which is all about what the vowels are doing, long and high, short and high, long and low. And then coming back here to the conjugation, which is all about put these things in this certain combination. Now you've got a future. Now you've got a perfective. Now you've got a hortative, right? So that hortative has to have either ga, zero, ka, and na, plus ka. So that's why you say yen qati, because that is a na conjugation verb. And we know it because we say to be that way, ye inati. Right? Like if you were an all-powerful wizard and you're just telling something to be green, suyach inati. Be green. That's green.
I get confused between the hortative and the command form.
Yes, the command can only be for telling a second person, either singular or
Okay.
plural. Do it, you all do it. Those are
Okay.
the only two options you get. Everything else switches to a hortative and does become a command. Nachtu'ah, let's go. But you can't plurally command. You can't say, we go. Like you can't say that. It has to switch to, just like in English, right? Like you tell a second, in English, you tell someone to do something and you just go kind of straight to it. You say, do it, write it, eat it. That's how you say it. If you want to say us, you have to say, let's write it. Let's eat it. Let's do it. Works the same way in Tlingit.
Oh, goodness cheese.
Secrets, right?
Oh.
But you end up with, like with English, you add the word let us, let them, let me, right? Let me go. Right? But for Tlingit, that means you have to activate the conjugation prefix of the verb and ka mode. So that's why you get naqati. And if you, then once you know, because like to exist, kudzati, that's not na conjugation. Anybody know what that one is? Achagach ieqati, chekech, kukakasti, Tlingit. That's how we had to say it. Kukakasti. It's ka conjugation. So that's where you get ka ka. Okay. But we're jumping ahead to hortatives, I know.
Well, thank you. I mean, it was just like this disjunction between kukwa and then guga, and I was like, what am I not seeing? So, but this is all fabulous. Goodness cheese.
All about whether that contraction needs to be triggered or not, which all has to do with that vowel ending before it. So that's why you get yenqati, yechnaqati. This is how it works, right? Okay, so we went through any questions on preverb, object, thematic. I think we got up to those. We'll probably start at conjugation, unless anybody has any questions about this stuff.
I've got one about ye inati. And you probably told me 20 times by now, but how do I know when to put the I with the imperative and when not to?
Yes. If it's an object pronoun, then it has to be there. So if I'm going to tell you to be good, that's an object verb. Igake. It has to
Right.
be.
Sheesh.
If it's a subject, it's only there if the classifier is plus D. And there's a reason, right? There's a reason. Anybody know what the reason might be?
Maybe the classifier contract? Is that?
The prefix must have a vowel. You
Oh, I see.
cannot only have a consonant, right? And let me show you an example. I know of one off the top of my head. So we're going to go back to the verb dictionary. So in the verb dictionary, we're going to look up, anybody know the verb for a salmon to change its color when it goes into the fresh water? Or do you know the noun? Right, that salmon has its own name. Some clans use that as a crest. Ţaqtaintan should know it. Ţukaháa should know it. So when that salmon, especially dog salmon, coho, sockeye, when they hit that fresh water, they change their color, right? When they go up to spawn, the name for that salmon is Ḳukaháa. So there's a place called Ḳukaháa, which is freshwater sockeye point. There's the Ṭaqtaintan have a house called Ḳukaháa Hit, freshwater sockeye hit or house hit. Okay, so that is also a verb. So if we go look up that verb, it should be right here. I'll scroll down. And there it is, that's a plus D classifier, right? D plus S to change color of sockeye and coho at spawning time. So now color is underlined, so that's what we're going to go look up. So when we go look up color, scroll down. There it is. First example, qat wudzaq. No problem, right? We would write this short, W-U. It is qaq, so that tells you it should be a zero conjugation verb. But now we get to the repetitive imperfective, like it happens regularly. Isqaq. Why is the letter I right there?
Just a filler?
It's just a filler. You cannot have only a consonant. Okay, you can have nothing in the prefix. Can anybody think of a verb that has absolutely nothing in the prefix? How about they are sleeping? What's that verb?
Ha.
Ta. Only the root. Everything else is gone. It's all zeros, right? Zero, they, zero, classifier, ta. They are sleeping. It's very unusual. There's another one, hun. They are standing, right? Same thing, zero, zero, hun. You can have that. You can have zeros. I think it's like, fine, have nothing in the classifier. But you cannot have only a consonant. You could not say s'aq. It's too weird. So Tlingit says, drop a vowel in there. And because of that, all plus D commands that they're using a subject, you have to have the subject in there. So if you were telling, you would chop this part off. You wouldn't have that underlying X. But you could turn, if you turn to a salmon and you're just being super bossy, but also respectful. Gook isqaq. Go ahead, change colors. Okay, that's a good question. But when we get into those state verbs, right, and you're commanding someone to be that, that's where it does get a little bit tricky. right? For example, we said be that way, right? Ye in a T. Be that way, which you can also say, I think I said be, I don't know, be, what color? What did I say? Be red. Fine. Right? So it's going to follow that same pattern. What if I say, I think I said this already, be good? It's ga conjugation. There's your major hint. It's going to be a zero classifier. It's going to be long and high.
And gata.
No, be good. Right? So
Yuck
we got to use
A.
the verb for good.
Yuck A.
Yuck
Yuck.
A.
The
Right?
A.
So here's the verb in the imperfective. Right? And if I say you are good, it's going to be yuck A. Right? With an object pronoun. Now I need to command someone. Be good. I said this to someone this summer and they said "Tank." So I do say this to my children.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yuck A. Oops. So that's a command form, right? What is this?
Be strong.
Well, that is you are strong.
Okay.
This is also g conjugation. But let me show you. So here you've got I, g, 0, right? That's what's in the prefix. Two things don't need contraction. We're going to end up here with I, g, and what's gonna come next? For a command form, I'm telling someone, be strong. And this is like physically strong. Like, you know, they got to lift this car off my leg or whatever's going on.
Huh?
Ga. Well, there's ga and, oh, sorry.
Huh?
Shla. Yep. So now you've got three things. So now there has to be contraction. You can't contract I. Shla is not going to contract in this case. So what's got to go?
The A.
Yes. And what happens when we take that A out of there?
Ikatlatin.
Well, the G changes to
K.
yes.
K. Kuklatin. Yeah.
Ikshitsin, right? It's
Ikhlasin.
unusual, right? And so I remember when we had the celebration theme one year was to be brave. Ituwuklatsin. And usually they'll add cha at the end, right? That one just likes to have cha. But ituwuklatsin. And everyone was like, why is it klatsin? Why is there a K there? No secrets, no surprises. It's the contraction that's doing it. Okay, Johan. Sheesh. Any other questions with this stuff so far? We're going to move to the conjugation and subject and the classifier. Almost all of your contraction takes place with these three things right here. The conjugation, the subject, and the classifier. Every now and then you'll have contraction out here. Usually the object, it can't really contract that much, but it will trigger that contraction. Right? So this is where things like to really start to smoosh up, is within these three right here. So we're going to jump down to the gray. Okay? So you have ga, 0, ga, and na. They do appear in this order. What we're seeing here top to bottom is what we have left to write. So this ga appears before the aerialis. It's important to remember the others come after. And this ga, which is the mode, is the last one. And so is the perfective, right? So coming back to this, ga, zero, ga, and na, they all have one thing in common. These ones will pop up for the command form, for the hortative, for the potentials, for the habituals, depending on the conjugation type of the verb. If that's a ga verb, then it's going to pop up in the command. Igake. If it's a ka or a na, it'll also pop up. Anu, nata, right? So these are tied to the conjugation type of the verb. There is an exception with both ga and na. Okay? What that exception is, for na, that will just pop up in progressive imperfectives. Ya nagut, ya anasqueen, ya anasqueen. Any of those ya na ones, that's the na that you're getting. It doesn't matter what the conjugation type is of the verb. It's just going to pop up in that form. Similarly, ga is going to pop up in every future. It just gets activated, right? So it's like ga and na just have that special thing about them. They pop up in ga for the future, na for the in the process of happening. Then you have qa mode, which is separate from those. It pops up in the future, the hortative, the purposive, the potential, and the conditional. I think you also, yeah, it's on.
Oh, Nate,
Ah,
what is the propulsive?
it's exactly like the hortative, but you add the letter T at the end, and it means did this verb so the other one can happen. So for example, qatuha, right? So let's go back to our notes. Seeing it, I do think helps. So here we have qatuha, right? This is a hortative. What does it mean?
Let us eat.
Let's eat. Right, so this is a command, like a hortative is a command in some situations. But then you could say hat to at qa to khayit. We came here so we could eat. And it has a fancy name. And so that's why there's probably a future where we retire some of these fancy names and we just call it so it could happen mode, right? Because that's all it is, right? And so like we do this thing, this is part of the chant in the language nest, as we'd say, ha shingit kusti shtu kash tuwut hat hwagut. What is that? That's your magic right there. You might know it as shtuchashtu, but this is and then the hortative form for let me do it, shtuchashtu. And now this form, the let it happen, is shtuchashtuwut. I came here so I could study our Tlingit culture. So that's what the purposive is. And so once you know how to build a hortative, right? So for example, what's this one?
You forgot the Seahawks after that.
Let's go outside. Let's go.
Let's go, right? So let's go. So now you could say teeth achos kawdliyeejí. You could say that. I put my shoes on so we could go. It's a weird sentence, but it could, like, just showing you like how you could put this thing to use. So for now, because we haven't like focused on how to do a hortative, if you look it up and you add the letter T, you probably got it. And sometimes you got to add the vowel. If it ends with a consonant, you got to add the vowel to it. Or like this, you got yit, right? Okay. We jumped ahead again. Another time shift. But those are good questions, right? If you got questions, ask them. So what we're looking at is the combination of these things and how they create meaning. Ga, future. Y, perfective, right? And so what they do is they just shift how we're looking at the verb. So once we activate this perfective marker, we're most commonly saying, let's look at this verb in terms of whether or not.
Can't be by this computer, you're grease.
You're not muted. It's how to ach. Okay. So the perfective is like, so once you activate perfective, then you could say perfective yes, perfective no. It happened or it didn't. And it's not about time. It's just about saying, did it become that way or not? Chosaku. So these are the ways that these ones often contract, right? Just sort of looking at common patterns is what we're looking for, so that we could start looking at them, committing them to memory, but also understanding the underlying mechanics. So what happens a lot is the letter A gets knocked out of ga, which changes it to a K. All those futures with the kqwa or kqwa, that's what's happening there. Kletzin, right? That ituwu kletzin. That's why it's becoming a K. It's because that something had to contract. This one is pretty likely to go. The which is the irrealis, which means there's some break with reality. It's not that way. It will be that way in the future, but it isn't right now. We're comparing things. There's a few different times for that, and sometimes the irrealis is just built into verbs. Like the verb to try classically has an irrealis in it. So then the command form should be kuna'aq. Try it. Try it. But a lot of people will say kana'aq nowadays. So one thing that the irrealis does, that the perfective also does, is once you have cha, it tends to jump over to the other side. It just likes to do that. Kesh chosaku wanachsaya. Right? And so you see this pattern. The irrealis and the perfective have very, very similar patterns. They do pretty much the same types of stuff. And when they were both there, they kind of combine. So with qa, when you take the A out of qa, you end up with an underline X. That's why when you go back to this one we just now did, right? You have na, qa, tu, 0, ot. So looking from the verb root, 0 doesn't count, but there's 1, 2, 3 things. Something's got to go. And qatu'at is that's too weird to say. So that's not going to go, the na, because that will sometimes go, and you just have the letter N. So what's got to go here is that vowel. Take that vowel away, this changes to an underline X. And that's why you have nach tu, which I am trying to say. This should be the name for lettuce, like the vegetable, because that is funny. Okay. Anybody got a question? Everybody okay?
That only works with English funny.
That's fine though. We speak both languages.
The world, we want to think it to be a world language.
Okay. If you have qa plus kha, you end up with qa. That's another, you just get this a lot. I'itke qaddishi. Let me help you. Well, there's a question in there, right? Will you let me help you? Which is, do you need help, right? So a lot of these hortatives, you know, you could say, kha, let me eat it. I don't know why you'd say it, but you could also say, ha it. I came here so I could eat it. Because I heard you have ishqeen shanya. If anybody's got black cod tips, give me a call. I'll come by. Okay, so qa and kha gets you qa. Take the a out of there, you get an underline x. Take the a out of ga, you get a k. Right? These will be common patterns that we will see. Na can contract by taking the a out of there. Yenqati. Right? Because yenaqti wouldn't, it just wouldn't work that way. It just sounds too weird. Right? For the perfective, there's a couple of different things I wanted to note in here. The perfective is most commonly w. That's usually what it just comes out as. But if you have a vowel, then you have a classifier and vowel in, or sorry, you have a consonant and vowel in the classifier. That's where you get the M. A, yow, de, ti. So you got, there's an A on one side, then the W, then the DI, a yum, de, ti. Right, that's when you get that switch to the M. For the second person, both singular and plural, the perfective marker, sorry, will be a Y. Yisaku, yisaku, yigut, iyagut, right? So that's when it's switching to a Y. The other thing is you do have, with the perfective marker, sometimes it matters if it's zero conjugation or not. So zero conjugation, you're going to get iya. The others, you're going to get ye. Yisaku, iyacha. It all has to do with the conjugation type. Everybody okay? That's a lot of information. Oh, you know what I said we were going to do? Maybe it's time to do it. Because I think you can only think about this stuff for so long before you start to get scrambled. So let's read some Tlingit. How about one sentence at a time? Let's just read all the Tlingit from here, and we'll stop when we get to here. Who wants to read the first sentence? Starting right there.
Whoosh.
Oh,
Uşkaya. Yede. Dink. Nuch hashagun.
Sheesh. Who wants to read the second sentence?
Go ahead.
Aya tundatani yeyati ha'in shikan gismi.
And the third one.
Ayukadangi ya gatuti.
Sheesh.
Ďaká shagun, yaha shagun yanach, ye chakau seich yaha shagun.
Jeez.
Ja, tlech, wush, gajach, gajajach, kadosnik nooch.
Ataya aya achtuasagu hain kayin nigi. Nigi.
Mhm.
Ha ye aya ya anak chengek ha stiyi ye.
Gulchishuhan. So sort of coming through like beautiful sentences. So this is Peter Nielsen talking to Sally Hopkins and sort of asking her to tell this story. Like, so this is how he begins talking to her, right? So 1958, and what's really wild is like generation or two removed, probably two, maybe three, from this battle, right, which was in the early 1800s. So just sort of walking through to see what we've got here, right? Whoosh, ayagete. So nested in the middle of here, you have gate, which means to be in opposition of something, to encounter something, to be leaning against something. Kind of depends on how it's being used. But I would say the default definition for gate is either a violation of the law or in opposition, right? So if you say wush gate, they're arguing with each other, right? But a lot of times you'll say wush to gate they're arguing with each other because they think differently. In this case, you have wush gate, which becomes gate. So with the mouth on there, you're sort of saying it is said in different ways, right? Contrasting ways. And then we do have kadunik. So we do have contraction going on here. With ka, that letter A might just fall out sometimes. Atyahaik shahid. That's a word for like drawing pictures. And that's kashahid, right? So in this case, this vowel is causing that contraction. So you have katanik nooch becomes ayagedik dunik nooch, right? So you do see it happening right there. Kadunik does change, right? From cow, you would say kawdliyeejí, right? It's how you'd say it in the perfective. But right here you have nooch after it, which means people always tell it. Katanik nooch. Hashagun, our ancestors, right? So it's really interesting how this is put together by a high fluency speaker, because you don't have to have the dot after Hashagun. So he's saying people tell it differently about our ancestors. Anybody see a verb that we just talked about a whole bunch at the beginning of class? Yeejí, right? Ha tundatani yeejí. This is how we are thinking. So this is, you could also say, ach tundatani yeejí. This is how I'm thinking about it. Ha'in shkanqilnig. What do we got there?
Story telling us this, tell us about
Yes, telling a story. So when you have kawdliyeejí is how the perfective would be for the third person of this. Now, what is going on with this verb? Anybody recognize or got any predictions on what might be going on with this verb? So this is the telling stories verb, right? What are the things that you got in there?
The reflexive.
Yes, so you got a reflexive at the beginning, right?
Future.
Not a future, or else.
Or
So let's take a look at this. So we've got shkanqishnik, okay? So we'll
fourth
jump
person?
here, right? So I'm going to put this in a, this is what this verb would look like as a third person perfective.
Kawdliyeejí.
Shkaudlinik, which would be they told stories, right? They told
Okay.
stories. So then you could command someone to tell a story. And this is a plus D, so now you have to have kanishnik. Shkanishnik. Tell stories. But what we have here is kangishnik. So what are the pieces that we have in the verb itself is we have ka. What else do we have? Na.
Ka.
Ka.
Yeah.
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 Sha.
So that's our prefix right there. And why would there be that combination? What must this be now?
Aggressive?
If you've got na and ka, just like yen qati,
So a command?
it's a hortative.
Hortative, yeah.
So it's a hortative second person, which is, this is really interesting. Like when we look at how these verbs work, right? So technically this would be let you tell it, right? But like grammatically, it's a little bit, it's interesting, right? So when we come back to here, we so when we come back to what a hortative kind of means, I like to think of it as a wish. I'm wishing that this would happen. We are hoping, our thoughts are, we are hoping that you will tell it. You will tell a story. Then we get another hortative right there. We're going to set that your words down. Which, you know, this now is pushing into metaphor, right? So here we have yanwutuwati, we set it down. But again, qatuti, because it's a zero conjugation, and so zero qa tu ti, which would be let us set it down, right? Which is really wild, right? Because that's not, it would be gachtuti if that was a future. So again, hortatives are used in a lot of wishful thinking, prayers, things like that. Let us put your words down. Let us put, and like, we're going to take it and set it down, like right here. Ach, ya hashagun yanach, keshukausachich, ya hashagun. Right, so there's a few different things that the speaker is doing here. Ach, from that, our ancestors, through this place, yanach, keshukausachich, they went out to all these different endings. That's how I would think of that verb. Yahashagun. Ayatesh wush qayach katishniknuch. Wush qayach would be the same way that they're to say things the same way. So here he says it's never told the same way. So what he's doing in terms of what I believe he is communicating to this master speaker, master storyteller, will you tell the story? We're hearing it in all these different ways, and we know that you know how it went. Aya achtuwasaku ha'in kayanigi. That's a little bit different, right? So this is one verb tied to the other. I want that you would have told us. Ha ye aya ya anach lingit chausatiye. So this is really interesting, right? So ye aya, this is how it is. Ya anach lingit chausatiye. Through the place where we became Shingit. That's how I would think of that. Because if this was Ade Shingit Chausatiye, that would be the way we became Shingit. But now you've got Anach, and now it becomes a place or a time.
Yeah. You know, Renee, I was just reading in the notes that this is her son speaking to her. And I think it really makes a difference in how he's talking to her. It's really intimate, eh? Really?
Right, because he's probably heard it his whole life, right? He knows how well she knows it. And yeah, sheesh. Okay. Any closing thoughts or questions? We'll keep going through this because I think the grammar stuff is great, but I know we're going to hit a wall with it. So once I feel like we're hitting that wall, Humpty Dumpty, then we will we'll jump to the story so we don't fall off the wall. Well, we'll listen to that next time. We'll listen to Anya Shahash tell Humpty Dumpty. It's great.
Yeah, that's really the story that we're reading right now is just really, really good.
Yeah. Okay.
So where can we Gusue way where's the link to this text? Is it in your curriculum folder or something? Sheesh.
It is. So that one is the field guide, and let me put this in.
Sheesh.
And I don't know if anybody's going to watch this class, but some people were really upset that I was posting the chat.
Huh.
I don't know why people are so mad at me. Come talk to me.
You posting the chat, you post the chat all the time in our class notes.
Right, but if it says direct message, like if someone writes me direct,
yeah, that's not in there.
I delete that. So they can go.
I'm glad you post the chat because even though I save it, sometimes I can't find it with that right class, and I'm trying to find out. Like a lot of times we have conversations, and we're talking about it, but the chat helps us with like either spelling something right or linking to something. So thank you, goodness sheesh.
Yeah, and someday when these people come talk to me, I'll have some hortative verbs for them. But
could you delete all my comments, please?
Nothing when it says it was a great class. Okay.
Achid idashi.
What's that?
A cut isewahak. You forgot it? Is that, or would you say a cut wa sewahak?
It'd be it. You can't
cut.
say it like a question. You gotta say it like a statement. A cut to say wakak.
A cut isewahak. Way Seahawks adach. Right? You forgot the Seahawks after that.
Oh, way Seahawks. So it a cut is.
Oh.
Way Seahawks. What has to data way you took what ton. I don't think about them.
So,
Yes.
okay.
Vikings. Ďakujem.
Wait, it a cut íxde way mariners.
Oh, chataga.
Ah,
Sue, Kesh a dad you to choti.
goose away twins.
Yeah, but a cut íxde and was that this class? We did all the remembering and forgetting. Yeah, that was Monday, right?
Yeah.
A cut I forgot all about. Okay, goodness cheesh. Let's see. Monday. What should we talk about on Monday to start the class? Conversation starters, anyone?
Thanks, things we're thankful for.
Okay. Sounds good.
Sorry, it's not more controversial.
Bring some statements about things you're thankful for. That's good. That's nice. Okay, gonna cheesh, Johan. Łukaháa.
Yay, Guatin.
Cheesh.
Goodness cheese.
How people gonna watch this class? No, I don't like the Seahawks. They're gonna be mad at me.
Cheese. Fiagan.
Cheese.
Cheesh.
Karachesh Ďakujem.
It was
John.
okay. Gonna cheesh.